Good evening, everyone. This is Scranton City Council's normal caucus time. This week we're having a public caucus and we will discuss the city's recycling program. The city wishes to expand our recycling program with initiatives to include improvements in our commercial recycling, tonnage tracking, additional downtown business participation, and yard waste collection improvements. Joining us this evening is Joyce Atala and Tom Lynch, and also Business Administrator Dave Bolzoni. Thank you for joining us and giving us the opportunity to discuss these important initiatives. So really, the floor is yours.
Well, we have been doing quite a few things this year. The first thing I'd like to say, we have been, meeting with Scranton tomorrow and trying to get some of their ideas on the downtown businesses. Tom and I, a lot of effort from Tom. We got the chamber mailing list of businesses, also the largest employers in the city, the institutions, most of the larger businesses, and they did get the letter and the annual reporting form for the grant. The annual report is going in next week to Barbara Giovanoli, the county recycling coordinator. We have to do an annual report, and then we have the grant that goes in September. I'd say this past year we did get about a 20%, no, maybe more than that, 50% increase in the amount of the grant. Wouldn't you say that? It was 35 the year before, 32. I think we got 51 or 52. And we hope to increase that this year. What we've been doing is also walking around the downtown. We've been going to the larger office buildings, trying to find out who all the owners of the buildings are. In some cases, we don't always know who the owner or who the manager is. We want to work with the downtown this next year, make sure they know that we have an ordinance, make sure we know who all the tenants are and how many recycling bins they may need. And then you've got to educate them. You have to ask them, do they have single stream recycling? Do they have commingled recycling? And work with them on the education. The hard part, though, is that some of the managers and owners of the buildings may have written recycling out of the contract. And that's why we have to, over the next few months, meet with those owners and say, this is the rule that you have to recycle in your buildings, and would you like our help in maybe writing a different contract? Again, the county, Barbara, will help us with that also. Many cities, it is very hard with those big buildings, the multi-family and the multi-office buildings. Those are always a little bit tougher. But what I say, we've been doing really well on getting in the institutions, the schools, the colleges, and more of the businesses than what we had before. Let's see what else we've been doing. We have a new recycling brochure.
Yes.
Tom has really worked a lot on that, and again, we worked with the county on that.
We're going to be making some changes to it, but not very many. We're going to be going and getting this year, I have a plan to get with the post office to get a brochure in every home in Scranton. I've got to work that out with the post office and a website with them. The hardest thing about doing this is having the people respond to you. I send out all the forms and everything. They just don't respond. They forgot about it. They put it away. They send it to the hauler. If they do send it back, the hauler hasn't signed it, and it's a lot of legwork chasing these people. Right. So that's a big part of the job.
I don't want to interrupt for 1 second. Maybe Mr. Bolzoni could answer this question. The garbage bills haven't gone out yet. Is there any possibility we can insert that into the garbage bill? The refuse fee, I should say.
Well, I went to Wayne Beck,
Yeah.
and he had told me that there was a company that does our garbage bills, and that we couldn't give the brochure to the company, and they would insert for us.
Okay. Well, that was a question I had.
Just to respond, and the broader perspective on that is, as you're aware, we're going through a billing conversion. So the billing and collection system is going to really change completely. the collection system was going to provide payment alternatives, which we've not had for quite some time, electronic formats, debits, credit card, so on and so forth. So the billing system is not going to allow for inserts, but it does allow for messaging. So what we can do is create an educational message if we want to incorporate that into the bill, because it's going to be one page which is two-sided.
Right.
So the first page would include most of the billing information. The second page would include a lot of instructional information. So there is room for messaging on the billing statement that can certainly be incorporated if you wanted to.
Okay, maybe there's some highlights on the brochure that you can incorporate in the messaging. That would be great.
Right, and there's a broader perspective to
Yeah.
all of that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're certainly aware, and I'll let you get back to your presentation in a minute, but also an initiative for 2017, as you're certainly aware at this point, is we've been approved for the state's technical assistance grant to come in and evaluate the refuse and recycling programs.
Right.
So it's been more a matter of timing when that's actually going to occur. I forwarded you an email recently that had shown that the process is still ongoing. So the expectation is that we really want to take a closer look at the program itself, because it's difficult to encourage residential recycling right now because of the way the refuse program is structured. So we kind of hope that the technical assistance grant and the evaluation that results from that is going to provide some good information for us later this year to really be able to thoroughly evaluate the program and find out how we can make improvements in it.
Okay. Thank you.
The other thing that I did want to say, this is just as a little bit of a clarification, because sometimes we don't all realize this. It took me a while to realize this. We have seen an increase in the city's tonnage. It's not a big one, but we have a small increase this year with the commingled containers and the paper. But remember that it's hard to just keep up sometime, because a lot of your tonnage is decreasing, for example, and is decreasing across the state and across the country. We have smaller papers, less advertising, and many people don't get the paper anymore, they get it online. So in many cases, you have less inserts and you have lighter papers. You also have lighter plastic bottles. I'm thinking of maybe the water bottle that we all remember. It used to be heavy and now it's extremely thin. It's like a quarter the size. And a lot of our glass is now in plastic. Now that's a good thing, because glass breaks, it causes cuts, it hurts machinery, but it is a lot lighter. So all I'm saying is that overall we've done pretty well in having a small increase at a time when materials are getting lighter. Okay, this is the curbside I'm talking about. And what Dave had mentioned with this technical assistance, it's going to look at things like the routing and, labor and things like that too. So it's a whole study that might be able to tell us how to do things a little differently. We have talked a lot about the leaves and yard waste, right, Tom? We've talked a lot about that, and trying to get more collected. They do a good job now in the fall, but we are looking at ways to pick up leaves and yard waste in the spring, and maybe once a month at least throughout the summer. That's something that's part of that technical assistance.
There was some talk about the city going to a bag, that large bag that people put on they get at grocery stores or Lowe's or Home Depot.
Right.
Is that still in the plans to ask people to use that larger bag, and will those bags be available to residents?
Well, I don't know how, Dennis has called Lowe's, and I've also called Lowe's, Tom has called Lowe's, and we've also checked at other vendors that are larger distributors, Pabco and Dano. They're manufacturers, and it does seem from first blush that Lowe's is the least expensive price. And it is also good in that A, they're 80% in the city, and B, they'll let you pick up small amounts, where if you go to someone else, you might have to get 20,000 at once. Well, they'll let you pick up smaller loads. But yes, that's something that we think would really increase the tonnage, giving people a bag. In some areas, they sell the bag at cost. You know, if it's 30 cents, they sell it for 30 cents. Some of our local boroughs do that, and other ones just give people the brown bag. So there's the two ways to look at it.
Well, obviously, if we give the bag away, then the city has to pick up the cost of the bag. We don't know how many we're going to need. Was there any thought to going out and soliciting businesses to be sponsors on the bag, and that would defray the cost, and maybe we can get the bag to people for free?
We haven't looked at that yet,
Okay.
no.
Because I know, I mean, you get the bag from
Can't say
Lowe's, I
that.
mean, they get all the advertising. That's-
You could put your name on the bag, and
Yeah.
then that's your bag, and then you can give it to people for free, yes.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, there's a
real
lot of
good
businesses that might
thinking.
want to participate in that believe in recycling, and I know, obviously Lowe's does, but they sell the bag, and they sell the bag and they get the advertising for it, so there
Right.
might be some other opportunities that we can, defray the cost.
Lowe's actually came up with a better price than some of the manufacturers did, again, because they have they're buying in millions and millions at a time, and so their price at 30-some cents was very, very good. I think it was like 34 cents. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's a good price.
On the leaf recycling, I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but
Okay.
I know in my neighborhood, the curbside suck them up with the vacuum just does not work. So I hope that we can move to that model. And personally, I think those bags should be given out free of charge to the residents because of what we're going to save in landfill fees. Not only is it better for the environment, but, the 30 cents it costs for a bag, a big bag of heavy wet leaves, multiplied by every residence in Scranton is a very large amount. So I hope to see us move towards that model as well.
Yeah, keep in mind, Councilman Rogan, that the increase in tonnage through increased collections results in a greater grant amount. So you've got an offset in revenue to cover those costs just through the increase that you can anticipate from a grant. So, yeah, I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah, and just as a layperson looking at what is done in the neighborhoods, the vast majority of leaves, unfortunately, are going into the back of garbage trucks in the city. That's where and again, the idea of having them sucked up at the curb sounded great, it sounded convenient, but it just causes more problems, especially if you get an early snowstorm and it ices up, and then
That's
it
right.
causes, flooding when it clogs up the storm drains.
Yeah, it's been my
It's true.
experience that the citizens will do whatever we ask them to do. They're really waiting for us to give them direction because we kind of stumbled over it this year a little bit. We said rake them to the curb, and then we said put them in bags, and the people kind of did what we told them to do, and then we changed course on them. So they'll be ready to do whatever way that we get rid of the leaves. So I think they'd be like that.
DPW only has one truck too, right now. Usually one's down, they have two trucks, one's down and one's being worked on. So they can't do the whole, that's good for the islands. I'd say the rest of the residents should be using bags.
Just to follow up
Bags are a good thing.
on the point in the beginning, when you're talking about these commercial properties,
Right.
if we start to recycle there, is the city going to be responsible for that pickup, or are the commercial,
They're haulers.
Haulers.
the haulers will? So what will they do with the recyclable materials? Will they take it to recycle it and get paid for it, or how will that work?
They will be taking it to the Lackawanna Recycling Center
And some will
and
take it.
separate it there to market.
Market, and some will take it, if it's county waste management, they might take it to their own facilities. Or they could take it, like Tom said, to Lackawanna. Some of them may take it to Diamond K or wherever, but you still would get the weight slip, and as long as it's signed, you can count that for your tonnage.
One thing that we discussed here quite a bit was if we are going to do a flyer or a mailing, would be to publish the schedule, something that would be able for the citizens to maintain for the course of the year, either on their magniform or calendar form that they could actually place on their refrigerator or keep somewhere. Is there any consideration to something like that in conjunction with the flyer or in addition to the flyer?
Talked about that some. We did talk about that some, about getting it together. And so the answer is, I think that would really help your recycling in every way. The next question would be getting the exact schedule together.
Yeah, it seems really right now we don't alternate the schedule. It seems once it's, like even in this storm, to me, it would have been better to go back to blue cans, but we started off with paper cans, or paper. But it seems to be once the schedule is set, every other week is every other week, so.
Following up on Councilman Wexler's point, I agree completely, and I am going to support this legislation tonight because I know there's a lot of initiatives that are in motion that are moving forward. But I believe the cost is $5,000. That could also pay, that same $5,000 could probably pay for a mailer to every resident saying what could be mailed or what could be recycled, what can't be, and a schedule. So I think there needs to be more done on education because it's really upsetting going through the neighborhood. So many people that don't recycle. You know, it's bad for the environment and it's costing us a ton of money. I'm sure Mr. Bolzoni knows the numbers better than I do, but if we could just get more people on board with recycling, you know, the cost benefits to the city would be astronomical. And part of it is education, especially for newer residents. I had a number of people reach out to me and say, well, what's the schedule? Why isn't it published? And really all people say is, well, watch what your neighbors do. You know, I think we need to do a better job than telling people to look outside and see if it's a blue can or a red can outside.
Because usually that one guy has it right all the time. That's what
Right.
Yeah, I usually look for him. Do we know what our percentage is of curbside recycling, mixed recyclables, and the paper recycling? Do we have any idea what that would be?
We could figure that out for you
Yeah,
this
that'd be
week
great.
and get that to you.
Well, we need to have a threshold so we can monitor that as we move forward, so we can say, okay, last year we were at 30%, next year we're at 40%, whatever the case may be, because, especially with that study being done, because, you know, we're really looking hard at different options so we can increase recycling, because that really is where we get the most bang for our buck as far as saving money to landfill. And the more money we save to landfill, we can offset that by reducing the fee to the property owner. And that's the ultimate goal anyway, is reduce the fee, not to, you know, if we can, you know, if we can increase the recycling up to a high percentage, 80, 90% of recycling, then we can dramatically reduce that fee. So.
There are not many places that have that 80 or 90%. The state does want everyone to have 35% recycling, and we'll get as much as we can. There's just, I mean, we will do as best as we can. I mean, it's hard to not have some.
Yeah, well, that's why we talk about all the time,
yeah.
and the study should bear us out in this, is a possible hybrid system or a per bag system to foster that incentive to recycle more. I think until we do that, we're always going to be chasing our tail on these lower percentages. So,
And keep in mind, too, the interconnectedness of pretty much everything we do. So we're working on a request for proposal right now for an identification process relative to rental registration. So, and we had talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
So better identification within the rental registration program should theoretically lead to better identification within the refuse billing process.
Exactly.
If that occurs, that obviously impacts revenues to some extent. So what we're trying to do is bring all of this together. So with an improved identification process and an evaluation on the program itself, it should lead to probably a better ability to really create some judgment regarding how the whole program is put together and how much it costs.
Do you find in other communities that a per bag fee works better as far as encouraging recycling? And everyone knows I support a per bag fee. It's probably not the most popular thing to support, but for senior citizens and people who live alone, I think it's more fair than a flat fee. Do you find in other communities the recycling rate's higher where there's a per bag fee versus a flat fee?
There's some of both. The per bag fee is definitely more equitable for people, for the single person, for the elderly, and for people that recycle more. So it's definitely more equitable. There are many areas that have really good recycling and don't have a per bag fee because the education may be good, or they're always on time, or they just have really gotten into recycling. For example, I'm just going to throw this out. Allentown always had a high recycling rate. Many of your boroughs around here have a pretty good recycling rate, and some have a flat fee. Center County, a flat fee, and they have one of the highest recycling rates anywhere. So a flat fee could still get you good recycling, but it's definitely more equitable for people.
Great.
if you have a per bag. So they're kind of two different things, but it's definitely saving people money that may be the elderly or the single person.
And to add to that, Councilman Rogan, there was a presentation made last year by a company that had some interest in really evaluating our program, and we likely will wind up talking to them following the state review. But in addition to per bag and flat fee, you also have the hybrid program, which was discussed at length. And there's municipalities throughout the country that are using a hybrid program that certainly makes some sense as well. So we're really looking at the resulting study that comes from the technical assistance grant as providing better identification in just what would be the best way for the city to approach the refuse program. So we're working into that process through the recycling program. How do you improve recycling? And our expectation is that some of that determination is going to be made by, given the makeup of the city, do we look at a per bag program? Do we look at a hybrid program? Is the flat rate program or flat fee program the best way to go? So I think a lot more information is going to be presented once the program is actually evaluated more thoroughly. But I would say all the options are probably on the table at this point.
The one thing that I would like to just add here is that some places like that hybrid, because, okay, you pay, I'm just going to throw this out, $100 a year or $200 or whatever, and you get your 5 bags a week or 6 or whatever you get. And so the city or borough has the money to operate the program. You kind of know what's coming in, and then above and beyond that, you have to pay so much per bag for extra. Then there's also sticker programs, like you get all of this for your money, but you have to pay an extra for certain items that are bigger. You have to buy a sticker or something with Freon in it. So many communities do that also. You get so much for your $200, or you pay extra per sticker for each item, different items.
Well, I know as far as on the residential side, I've lived in communities where there was per bag fees, and everybody there was an absolute expert on recycling. I became an expert in recycling overnight. I'd be down to 1 garbage bag a week with 3 recycling containers a week. That's just the reality of things. But I think where the city really needs to do a better job, and we're going to get our most tonnage, is the signed tonnage slips from our commercial vendors, commercial properties that are out there. That's where I think a lot of our, if not most of our focus should be. And I know, Tom, you said, the hassle of the chase down, it's never ending. And I think we had the same conversation last year when we talked. And me being on the business side of things, I remember that. So what, do we have a standard operating procedure for collecting the signed tonnage slips from these companies? What's the process from start to beginning on that? So when do we send the initial letter out saying, on this date we need?
In January. They're supposed to be back by the 1st of February. We give them till the end of February.
February comes and goes, then what's our next avenue?
If they're not in by February, I send another letter out. And then if that doesn't answer, then I start making phone calls.
Okay.
A little personal touch on it.
And then visits, too. You made quite a few visits,
yeah.
we both
I
made.
go out and I start walking, pounding the street. Right now, I've got all the ones back except for maybe 20.
And when we send this initial letter, I haven't seen the initial letter, is the ordinance included, or is the ordinance alluded to?
Excuse me?
Is the ordinance alluded to that they need to report their tonnage to us for the recycling?
We send a letter out with the form, and we send out instructions on how to fill out the form, and they come in.
Okay, because I definitely feel for you. I know the struggle of trying to get those forms back in, but I mean, a business who has, dumpsters and dumpsters of cardboard a week, that's money in the bank right there as far as getting our tonnage up, like that. So
Truthfully, the bigger the company, the easier it is to get it back in. I mean, they're happy to just fill out the form and get their hauler on.
The bigger the companies, the more they have their act together, and they have, policies for this. It's more the little guys that kind of need the nudge, so to speak.
Goes off to the side, they forget about it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
I'm good.
I just have one question. The contract extension is for 18 months, so can you just run us through what you're trying to accomplish in the next 18 months? So when the contract is up, when you look back, what would you have liked to seen accomplished? And if you had a checklist, what would you like to check off?
Well, the first thing I'd like to accomplish is that we have more yard waste collection and leaf collection, which, again, that has to do with routing, with labor, with a lot of things. How do you add this item and increase the item? But I'd certainly like to see more of that. We're lagging in terms of that much more than we are in terms of the curbside commingle and paper. Okay, so we have to really get that in order. We're doing okay in the fall, but the other times of the year, we have to increase that. We do know that. I'd also like to see more residential. Again, some of the weights are lighter, but I'd like to see more residential, absolutely. Once again, the brochure sent out, it's not hard to get that on the website. A lot of people look at the website that won't look at a piece of paper, but yet there's still so many people, it doesn't matter if they're young or old, that have it up on the refrigerator. People do. You know, whether it's a college student or whether it's, so we have to get those brochures out, we have to get more of the residential. We have to do more work in the downtown. There has to be a lot more recycling in the downtown. We have to get those reports in. We have to get that working together. The downtown business is working with Scranton tomorrow and getting more recycling there. We have to get more of the landlords understanding that they have to put recycling in the contract and that they are responsible for this. They have to do the aluminum cans, the office paper, and the corrugated cardboard. They have to do those, and we have to make them understand that they have to do it and write it in the contract. That is their responsibility. So, I mean, all of that needs to be done. The thing that we didn't mention, we have been going to some of the neighborhood organizations. Tom, we've given talks to some community groups. We've started on that, and again, we're working with Barbara, with the county on that. So all of that, I mean, honestly, all of that has to be done. The yard waste really has to increase. More in terms of the commingle and paper, the schedule that you've talked about, people knowing when they're going to recycle, what to recycle, getting the brochure out.
Thank you.
You know, I don't...
One quick question, I know we're running late. On the leaf collection, so to be straight, are we committed on getting bags? Is that what we're looking at? Because I think we all are in favor of getting bags, at least making a trial out of this thing and see if that happens, especially if the cost is nominal. Secondly, I think, you know, you just touched on the fact that education is important. One of the deficiencies I see is when you walk through downtown Scranton, all we have is waste receptacles. We don't have recyclable receptacles. I think the city, if there's grant money out there for that, I think we should look into that to get, you know, recycling containers in our downtown, so the public, when they're walking down the street with a bottle of soda or a bottle of water, have some place to put it besides a trash can. I think that's part of the education process. So I don't know if that's on the radar, but it's something I think we should look at.
We have talked about that a lot with the county, but also with Scranton Tomorrow. There's no grant money for those bins. Scranton Tomorrow has talked to, and we're both on the committee, has talked to some of the waste companies about sponsoring those bins. What I do want to say, and I want them out there, I think they have to be out there for education, but people often don't do it in a public arena as well as they do in some others in their home, but they have to be out there in terms of education. Again, the state does not pay for those bins. Right now, there's no state grant money for your 902 grants, for your equipment grant, until they pass the $2 a ton fee again at the landfill. That has to be extended. So there's really no grant money right now this year. But the state hasn't funded those downtown bins for a couple of years. I think they have to be there too. I really do.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're under the constraint of time.
I talked too much, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for the information. It seems as the program is making an improvement in our recycling program, and we look forward to working with you in the future. We are going to, this is the end of our caucus. We'll take a 5-minute recess to get our papers together, and then we'll return.